There we go. Okay.
Okay, so today is October 8th,
Mm-hmm.
and I'm talking with Janet Esseiva,
Mm-hmm.
and we're going to talk a little bit about Bowen Island and about you as an artist and your story, really, about what brought you, perhaps a little bit about what brought you to the arts, if you have anything you want to say about that, your time on Bowen as an artist.
Mm-hmm.
And as a curator of the gallery, perhaps, if you wanted to speak to that a little bit. But mainly what you see as what's of interest to you around the culture of Bowen and how Bowen has helped you as an artist
Mm-hmm.
and has held you as an artist and how it supports you and how you define the culture here. So that's a lot.
That's a lot.
And so
where to start? Okay. Yeah. All right.
So why don't we start with just asking the question as to maybe talk a little bit about yourself and about your life as an artist,
Mm-hmm.
and maybe we can start there and take it.
If you want to talk about my life as an artist, it started where I started, which was in South Africa. And I never formally studied art because it wasn't going to make me any money, and I needed to be financially independent. So I studied computer programming and always did art on the side, attended night classes, studied with artists who were offering classes, weekly classes in their homes, and just slowly started finding my way that way, having something going to sort of keep me sane away from the very, very analytical world that I was in with the programming. And that kind of gained momentum, especially when we came to Canada, which was in 98. And I suddenly had this really deep need to create more, and started doing the same thing, started taking a lot of workshops, found another artist who would mentor me on a weekly basis, workshops, Emily Carr, whatever continuing learning was available in the district, just anything I could lay my hands on to keep me in that space while I was raising children and trying to keep a home going and working a little bit, and there was always this need, and then having my first show at home, which was lovely, lots of support from the community. We weren't on Bowen yet, and then eventually moving to Bowen and knowing when we were looking for a home on Bowen, knowing that the house was going to have a studio or a space that was going to be mine. And we found the house, and I've now overflowed into 2 rooms in the house with all my artwork, and the house has just accommodated that. And that has, and Bowen has been amazing in terms of its support. There's a lot going on for artists. There are lots of other emerging artists on Bowen. The art-specific co-op gallery was very supportive in being with a cohort of other artists who were all learning and all trying to find their way in the art world. And that was fantastic. And then doing a lot of art instruction off island, pursuing artists whose work I really, really admired, finding out if they did workshops, going after that, and doing a lot of workshops to get the technical information that I wanted to achieve, the outcome that I wanted in my paintings. Kind of a backward way of doing it. So knowing I wanted to achieve something and then going and finding an artist who technically knew how to do that, persuading them to give a workshop, and then doing that and finding out. And I guess that kind of is almost comes out of a sort of a programming background, because you have a problem to solve, you go and
Right.
find the tools,
Yeah.
and you solve the problem. So that's very much how I find painting is for me, is very analytical in it. I know what I want to do. I'll go find the tools, the skills, find out the technical information about the paints that I work with. Is it achievable? If it's not, can I make it achievable? What is that boundary that I can push? And that's kind of how I've gotten to where I am now.
Very nice.
Yeah.
Okay. So, and you've been actively painting most of your life then?
So for the last 10, 15 years, it's increased to the point in the last 5 years I paint daily.
So 5 years.
Yeah, daily. Yeah, and before that maybe 3 times a week. But now it's, if I haven't painted in the day wasn't worth living.
Right.
It wasn't a day.
Right. It was
very important
part of your
Yeah.
life now.
Yeah.
Okay. So when you think of Bowen Island,
Yeah.
and you think of, what would you say the impact now is on you as an artist living on an island? What's the distinction? How do you distinguish Bowen from another place that you might have lived, either South Africa or other place in Vancouver?
In Vancouver. And the living in a small community means that you know a lot of people and a lot of people know you. So just in terms of the support of people around you, the organizations, such as the Arts Council, there's you kind of are able to maximize your networking very quickly. So for me, that would be people who want to know about what I'm doing, or people who want to take an art class that I teach, or if I want to get the word out about a show that's coming up, it's really easy to do it in a smaller community that you're well networked in. You know everybody's business and everybody knows your business, so it's really easy to get the word out.
What has your artwork always been depicting nature? Has it always been in that theme, or has Bowen influenced you on that?
It's always been sort of West Coast, some interior, mainly West Coast. I did go through a stage of including a lot of feminine forms in the nature forms, so there would be a sleeping woman who would become a mountain, but it would be clear that, there was a woman in there, or a tree that had a woman's form in her. So I did quite a bit of that at one point, and then sort of in the surrealism, but I'm mostly back into pure nature now.
Okay. So I want you to maybe think about what would be the most memorable, creative, or artistic experience you've had so far in Bowen. What comes to mind?
For me personally, so here's one, and for me it's memorable because I learned so much from it. So it was somebody who asked me to do a commission of their very, very beautiful garden. And I couldn't get it like I wanted to. I couldn't make it the way I wanted to. I got a lot of advice, which I've since learned one never does as an artist. Because everybody will have an advice on how to improve things, how they would improve it, not necessarily how I would improve it. And put a lot of energy and work into it, and spoke to a lot of people, and then realizing the commission wasn't going to happen. And it was an amazing creative experience for me, in that I realized that there are some things that I need to let go, and that not everything is possible.
That's right.
So and even with all the support in the world, and wanting to do something for this person who I loved very much, who wanted the commission, wasn't able to make it work, and having to let that go. And I think that was a very important learning about creativity for me, that it's not, you can't always make it.
That's right.
Sometimes sometimes it flows through you and you create something, and sometimes it flows through you and just carries on.
So was that a lesson about commissions itself, or was it lessons about that situation that couldn't come to fruit?
Well, there was one thing about commission, and I'm always careful around commissions, but also just about, there are some paintings that are just never going to see the light of day.
Right.
They are just never going to be out there.
That's right.
For whatever reason.
Wow. That's strong. That's
Yeah.
strong. So, what has been then your greatest challenge being on Bowen as an artist?
So, I think as an emerging artist, in the beginning, sort of creating paintings for the Bowen market, and you have a price point and you have a size that works for people, and that people want to support you and they can afford it, and then growing out of that into creating something for another market that isn't Bowen, but still having people who want to support you, and how do you bring those two together? Because I paint now for a more international market, and I have representation outside of Bowen Island, and that's what I paint for, and it's kind of it's like leaving home in a way, it's like leaving mom and dad behind, and it's very hard, because some ways you still want to be with the community and paint in the community that supported you and paint for them. In other ways you want to move away.
That's right.
So that's kind of growing up as an artist. It's hard. It's hard.
So
exciting but hard.
When you look at that transition that you had to make from a market that was specifically born and bred here and moving into a greater field of interest, what would you say, if there was a way that you would support other artists in that? What would be the most important thing that you would recommend that they do? For instance, being somebody who supports the arts on Bowen so strongly and supports new artists to emerge, like young photographers, or what would you say is the biggest message on that? How not everybody's born to leave Bowen, but some people would need to leave Bowen, and it was your experience to leave Bowen. So what would you say to that?
You need to want it with everything in you. It's got to be a need that you want so badly that you can taste it. A lot of people have kind of vague dreams, but you're not going to be able to do it if it's just a vague dream, just something I'd like to have. You have to, it has to be a goal that you actively pursue and go after and reach for, and that you want with everything in you. Because I've come across a lot of artists who are really quite fantastic, and who want to move on, but there's something that holds them back.
Right.
And that's why I say you need to get rid of those things that are holding you back. Your want and your drive to want to reach out and grab what's waiting for you off island has to be so great that nothing can stop you. And it's only ourselves. It's only us that stop ourselves.
Yeah. It sounds too that you're expressing that in your particular situation, you had a calling to extend yourself outside, and you had to want that.
I had to want that. I had to recognize it and trust it and go with it and work with it and build those relationships all over again.
Right.
And be really professional. There's this view of, as artists, that we're kind of these hokey, flaky kind of people. And when you move off island, you have to be really, really professional, because you're dealing with a whole different slew of people, professional galleries who expect you to present yourself as though you're applying for a job,
Right.
where you need to have your CV and your bio and
Right.
your artwork properly documented, and you need to turn up on time with your artwork dry, all the things that we kind of say artists need to do. Oh boy, you better have your ducks in a row when you go off island.
So that was a big piece to meet up with that.
Yeah.
With that level of professionalism, and that it wasn't a small town anymore.
Nope, not at all.
Expectations were much higher.
Much higher, It's just, there's just no leeway or no allowance for sort of half-done, half-baked work, or, products that aren't finished professionally.
So there are a few questions here I have for you that pertain to creativity specifically. One is, what holds you back from being more creative?
Probably fear is always what holds us back from being more creative. Just so many fear of failure, fear of, okay, if I do succeed, what then? Fear of change, fear of being mediocre. That's always been a huge thing for me. And just having to work with those fears, and well, first of all, acknowledging that they exist, and then embracing them as part of the journey, and seeing how you can partner with them.
So when you're looking at your own process of being creative and supporting others in the community creatively, what do you see is the greatest asset that you have, that you bring to Bowen?
I guess as Bowen has supported me, I'm feeling like I can give more and more back to the artist community now that I'm working outside of Bowen, or selling my work outside of Bowen and working with galleries off island, and just coming back and just reinforcing everything that artists need to be, and help them get organized, and
so the basic understanding of the bigger picture is a great asset for you, but also for Bowen.
For Bowen, and for Bowen artists.
Right. So you bring that asset, but Bowen has that as a resource too.
Yeah.
For having you here.
Yeah.
That's nice. That's really good. Since you've been here, what has changed the most? Where do you seen the most change in Bowen? In terms of culture, in terms of artistic, in terms of the creative?
In me, of course, because I've changed so much in 10 years, and how I view everything. But so Bowen has a whole long tradition of things that it just always does culturally, so like Remembrance Day is just amazing. I just find it incredible how the whole island practically comes out for Remembrance Day and stands together and just remembers and looks at what we've lost and what we have, and what we want to keep, and what we stand for. I think that is incredibly strong, but that's not something that's changed. That's just something that's always been there, and I hope it always does. What has changed most in the 10 years?
Has the art changed at all? Do you find that there's a movement at all?
The art is so dependent on who is creating art at that time and who is showing the art publicly. And there's definitely been artists that have come and gone, and different levels of experience. So what we get to see in the gallery from year to year changes depending on who's around and who has some fantastic new idea, or who we can persuade to bring their art out of the studio and put on the walls. So it's as the people change, so does, I think, the art.
Mm-hmm.
And the culture itself, I think, has stayed pretty much the same in terms of who we are and
Mm-hmm.
and what we do when we come together and how we celebrate.
So how would you define Bowen culture today? Is there a word that is there a quality? Is there
eclectic?
Eclectic?
Eclectic for sure, because there are things that sort of most people do, and then there are smaller breakaway groups that do things. And I belong to one of the subgroups, which is a group of Jewish people who do a few cultural things every year. And I mean, we love that. Some of it is religious, and most of it is not. It's just cultural. It's just having the foods and singing, having the music and singing the songs. And
right. Do you see a strong influence on Bowen, on the culture of Bowen, in terms of, as you say, there's spiritual groups, and how do they influence the culture on Bowen? Do you see a trend there? Do you see anything that you'd like to speak to?
I mean, there are some things that, a lot of things that are spiritually sort of supported, even though there's nothing religious in them. So, like the drumming groups, there's something very spiritual about that, even though there's nothing religious in that. And I think that people on Bowen a lot of people are very, very spiritual, and that sort of channels what we do and our energies, what we put our energies into it, so that drumming or painting or singing. The singing is amazing on the island. The music, the writing, there's a spiritual quality to all of it, which makes it very deep.
That's right.
And a very moving experience.
That's right.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's another umbrella.
Exactly.
That holds it all together.
Yeah.
That influences the culture and how it moves.
Yeah.
So the last question I have here for you is, do you have any other thoughts about Bowen's artistic or creative needs, strengths, opportunities, or ideas about our culture and its development?
Well, Bowen hates change.
Okay. Can you speak to that? Why would Bowen hate change?
I mean, I can only speak for myself. I mean, I'm very much an introvert. I really need my time in my cave. And I've guard really closely the outside influences on myself. So when there are new ideas that people want to develop that impact me, I'm like really careful around how that influences sort of the sanctity of what I consider, mine. And I think a lot of people in Bowen have sort of made these sacred spaces for themselves. And so, whether it's the outdoors or particular areas of Bowen that they want to protect and how they experience them, sort of the Cape comes to mind. And just the various beaches and the mountains and the outdoors very much. I mean, we're very, very protected of both the small spaces that we make for ourselves and the larger expanses that we make for ourselves. And I think any development that we do creatively, or any kind of cultural development that we do, will have to will have to incorporate all of that, and which will be hard because we're all very opinionated as well, and we don't want to lose what we have, and yeah, we just want to protect the way things are. So that we'd have to look at that really carefully. How do we, maybe, and it needs to be framed more in how do we support what we already have? How do we support spaces people have made, and how we enjoy Bowen and how we are in Bowen? I think.
Is there anything else you would like to say as we finish up on this interview today that comes to mind that you might want to tell us about yourself, Bowen Island, being an artist?
I guess I love Bowen Island.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I love its people.
Mm-hmm.
I love how feisty we are with each other. And I love our ability to reconcile with each other.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what makes it this special place that it is more than any